Anybody here? So I'm just going live on my channel.
I think so. I don't know.
Okay.
The link was not. That's kind of bad.
Just a moment. Just another day with technology.
Yes, indeed.
Hello, hello. Nobody here.
He has to send out a whole new link. That could definitely cause something to.
Looks like we have one person. Hi. Is that Chris? I can't tell who it is. I can't see who my people are. Hello. Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. How's it going? Hi, I am figuring out YouTube Live as we go because this is my first time. Oh, and it'll even give you lighting. That's nice. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Will you tell Chris I can't see the people?
Yeah. Like you can't see their name?
I can just see account. Hi, guys. We're going to get started in just a minute. Thank you for being patient. This is my first time with YouTube Live. I am a novice at YouTube Live, but I'm here and we're going to figure it out. And this is going to be about identifying your attachment style. We are going to deep dive into attachment. We are just going to let some folks get online and then we will get started. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome.
People are popping on them.
Yeah, we've got 25. Hi, everybody. Welcome. It doesn't let me see their names. Hello, guys. Everybody's popping on, and we'll get started in a few minutes, but I just want to give everybody kind of a chance to get here and get settled in, and then we will get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. People are coming in. Good to see everybody. Hope everybody had a great day. Hello, hello.
Busy day.
Very busy day. Hopefully it was a good day for you.
Recording the podcast.
We recorded the podcast today. If you don't listen to the Love Doc podcast, shameless plug for the Love Doc podcast. We are on all platforms and we do a lot of deep dives on the podcast. It's my favorite thing to do is to be able to do deep dives on the pod. So we have about 45 people. I'm just gonna give people a few more minutes. Let's see if I can. I don't know what to hit to be able to see. I'm experimenting here for the first time, guys. I've never used YouTube Live before, ever.
Your assistant
Okay.
is gonna come in.
My assistant is gonna come in and look and see. That's Raina from the Love Doc podcast. She's my co-host.
Chris said he was looking into it. Yeah, I don't see where you can see people's names.
No, it doesn't show me. Gosh.
Like
Whoop.
even.
Whoop. Just kidding.
So if you click on that, it doesn't show
No,
anything?
it sure doesn't.
Hmm.
It's really weird. Well, we have 61 people on here, so if you could just tell Chris that we can't, how to figure out how to get
Okay.
to see, so I can call people by their names, because I would really love that.
You can't see
And
comments either?
All right, guys, I think I'm probably gonna go ahead and get started in just 1 minute. I'm gonna let other people kind of settle in. That way I don't have to backtrack because this information is so important. I don't want anybody to miss it. Okay, so I'm just gonna let everybody kind of settle in, let a few more people hop on. Hey, Raina.
He's looking into it.
Okay. All right, guys. Are we ready to get started? I'm ready to get started. All right, 92 people. Can we hit 100? That would be really cool because I'm not used to this platform and I want to start getting used to it because it is such a great platform for information. I personally love to be a consumer of YouTube, but YouTube Live is not anything I've ever done, and I'm the least tech-savvy person ever. Fix your marriage? Absolutely. Fix your phone? Zero. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. So tonight's topic is identifying your attachment style. And first and foremost, those attachment quizzes you see online are garbage. Why are they garbage? Because when psychologists make assessments, they use a very, very credible science called psychometrics. And psychometrics is the science of creating psychological assessments. So the way that psychologists create assessments is that first they talk to experts in the field, they look at the research, they formulate some initial questions, they give it out to some test populations, they bring it back, they run it through some statistical models to look at, what questions are correlated together. We do something called factor analysis, which really pulls the underlying constructs out of the assessment. And this is years worth of work, okay? So things like the ECS, Experiences in Close Relationships scale or the ECR, I'm sorry, revised version is an assessment that measures attachment. And it took years to create and multiple populations, lots of statistical testing. It has to be published, it has to be peer reviewed, and then it has to be copyrighted. So the people that are out there making these online quizzes about attachment are scamming you. They're scamming you. And they're banking on the fact that you don't know any better, that you don't know that psychological constructs are measured with valid and reliable assessments. So I'm a scientist, I'm a social scientist, a social psychologist, which means I'm a trained researcher. And I'm a coach, I'm not a clinician. So I'm an expert in the science of attachment and the science of relationships in general, with attachment being my main focus. And so if you come to my practice and you work with me, I use a qualitative measure, which is a semi-structured interview, which has also been found in the science to be a very valid way of assessing attachment. But to create a quantitative or numerically scored question assessment, it has to go through years of scientific research. And so those online quizzes are not going to give you good information, which is why one of the reasons I'm doing this webinar. But the science now says that a lot of people are able to self-identify their attachment with enough information. And that's what I help people do in my hybrid program. If they don't understand their attachment, the first class is much about helping people individually really figure out their attachment style. And why do we want to know what attachment is anyway? It's solid psychological science. It was created in 1958 by John Bowlby and further extended quite a bit by a lady named Mary Ainsworth, and then we have had tens of thousands of scientific studies that have validated and shown the theory to be reliable, which means it's really stood the test of time. And of all of those studies, nobody, not one person, since 1958 has falsified the tenets of attachment theory. Which, when we have that much science behind something and we don't have a competing theory that comes forth and essentially squashes it, we can be very confident that it's good science. And we've studied it across populations. It holds true across relationship types. So that's heterosexual, homosexual, doesn't matter. Attachment it absolutely stays fluid. It really applies to any type of population and any type of relationship because it sort of grasps at humanity, all right? And a lot of people resist attachment theory for one reason. I don't want to be put in a box. I'm an individual. I don't want to be put in a box. And I get that, totally. And for most of psychology, the first thing you will learn on day one, if you go to take a psych class, is the formula is S times P equals B, which is situation times personality equals behavior. But that is not true in romantic science. because of the human mating strategy, things have to be somewhat predictable. Humans have to be somewhat predictable. And the science of social psychology is really about finding things that deviate from that formula, S times P equals B. What things are more driven by situation? We call that operating at the state level versus personality is trait level. Personality is sort of the top of the hierarchy, and personality will find its way into all aspects of your life. Your personality is fairly stable. There's some flexibility, but it's fairly stable. Attachment is down the hierarchy at the level of behavior. So why do we say that? Because it interacts with a specific situation, and that situation is intimacy. So we actually have 4 attachment buckets, and a lot of coaches and a lot of therapists only talk about 3. And that's not good science. Maybe they read the book Attached, which is really old and a little bit biased against avoidance in my opinion. But we have 4 buckets. Secure attachment, and that's what we all want to strive to be. We have anxious preoccupied attachment, fearful avoidant attachment, and dismissive avoidant attachment. So that gives us 4. So I'm gonna break down each attachment style tonight. I'm gonna go over the main predictors of attachment, which are childhood experiences, previous relationship experiences, conflict-related behavior, and EQ, or understanding of emotions, and really within that little EQ bubble, emotional vulnerability and comfort level with emotional vulnerability. So I'm gonna break down attachment into those constructs because that is how we can really capture attachment in a qualitative way with words, right? So let's start with the anxious preoccupied. I'll go through the 3 insecure styles, and then we'll talk about secure attachment and what does it take to get to secure attachment. Because most people, and the data that has come out recently is showing that the generations are becoming more insecure as we go along, which is a little bit scary. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have really distracted parents on technology, so they're misattuning to their children. We have children that are creating surface level interactions via social media, via FaceTime, and they're not having true face-to-face conversations with intimacy. They're using technology as that buffer or that barrier that lets you control your presence. And that is going to disrupt how your nervous system functions in in-person intimacy. So let's get down to business here. Let's start with the anxious preoccupied. This is the least common attachment that I see in my practice, but it is what most people think that they are. Interestingly enough, most people think they're anxious preoccupied. They're very much really fearful avoidant, but I do see some APs in my practice. I see enough to know that it exists and that we have plenty of people out there. And I'm gonna tell you why I don't think I see a lot. Okay, so first of all, you want to picture attachment being on a spectrum, okay? And on this end, we have anxiety, and on this end, we have avoidance, and just picture secure right here in the middle, okay? So you can deviate from secure towards anxiety, or you can deviate towards avoidance. So the anxious preoccupied person, they only stay on the anxious side of the spectrum, and attachment is on a spectrum. So you could be, if this is security, and this is really, really severe AP attachment, you could be like right here, or you could be all the way over here. So you can be mildly insecure or severely insecure. And that definitely is going to be partially predictive of how long it's going to take you to earn your security, where you're starting from, right? So anxious preoccupied individuals almost always report, I had a good childhood. I was loved by my parents. We rarely see, if ever, and when I say rarely, it's like 99% of the time, we don't see big T traumas in an AP's childhood. We see something very different called intermittent reinforcement. And I'm going to explain that concept in detail because it's really important and it's going to apply in so many ways. Intermittent reinforcement is this idea that sometimes our need is met and other times it's not met, and when our need will be met ends up being unpredictable. So social psychologists a guy named B.F. Skinner, who was a behaviorist, a very, very popular, sort of ruled psychology in the 70s and the 80s, was the person who coined the term intermittent reinforcement. Essentially, he put little rats in a box, and there was a little lever in the box, and they would press the lever and a little food pellet would come out. And to test the concept of intermittent reinforcement that he hypothesized would give the rat a lot of anxiety was that he was going to make the amount of presses variable. Like they couldn't guess how many presses it would take. So he made the presses variable, and then eventually he changed the intermittent reinforcement to be the time between presses was variable when they would get the pellet. So sometimes they would have to press it 3 times, sometimes they would have to press it 5 times, sometimes they would have to press it once, maybe 10 times. They couldn't guess how many presses it would take before that pellet came out. Guess what happened to the rat? They became addicted to the lever. They pressed it and pressed it and pressed it and pressed it and pressed it until their little hearts gave out, literally. They even used to say you could hear a pop sound. Their hearts would give out from pressing that lever. So what happened to the anxious preoccupied in childhood is they had either one emotionally attuned parent and one very emotionally unavailable parent. So need was met, say, with mom, emotional attunement need was not met with dad, or vice versa. Sometimes it was because parents worked a lot. So they were great parents. When they were home, they nailed it. They were attuned to their children. But 2-parent working household, maybe even mom or dad had 2 jobs. And so they just weren't home as much. So sometimes the child felt abandoned when parent wasn't able to be there to meet their needs. Sometimes I see it when there's a lot of kids in a family where, parents are trying their best, but they have 6, 7, 8 kids in the house, and they just can't give each child individual attention, which is so important in raising secure kids, having one-on-one time with your kids every day. So there are a lot of factors that could cause parents to be inconsistent in their ability to meet their children's needs, okay? And when this happens, it creates, like B.F. Skinner saw in the rat, anxiety and addiction to trying to get your need met. And that is exactly what happens to anxious preoccupieds inside of relationships. They usually pick partners, and they're usually attracted to partners that give them intermittent reinforcement, because our attachment wounds are self-fulfilling prophecies, and I'll go into why that is later. But they tend to really have a big bucket of needs inside of their relationship. So they can be very clingy. Their blueprint really says, hey, once we're established, we should kind of do everything together. They're sometimes victims of what we call enmeshment, which is like the line between where you are and your partner is, and where you start and your partner begins is blurred. It's just you and me are kind of one, and anything you do, I will do. And when you are there, I will be there. So they can really expect that relationships are actually very codependent, and they shouldn't be. And anxious preoccupieds can sometimes really push people away with having too many needs and being too clingy. And their deepest need inside of a relationship is reassurance of stability of that relationship. They need reassurance that they are loved and that their relationship is stable. And their biggest wounds are 1, I am not good enough, and 2, I will be abandoned. They have a big fear of abandonment, right? Because the intermittent reinforcement, their need was met, and then when it wasn't met, during that time when it wasn't met, they felt abandoned. So they had that feeling of abandonment as a child. And then the I am not good enough wound really implies you could be better, and that is essentially how anxious preoccupieds tend to approach relationships. They tend to go, okay, what is it that my partner wants from me? How do they want me to look? Am I funny enough? Do I have the same interests as them? If I don't, I'm going to learn what their interests are. How can I be what my partner needs me to be to make them happy? And they really try. They will twist themselves into whatever pretzel they think they need to twist themselves into to make sure that they get the love that they are craving, because so much of their inner worthiness is coming from their partner. Their partner's love, attention, affection really validates them and makes them feel loved and worthy. And so when they're not in a relationship, the loneliness of being single makes them feel abandoned, not chosen. And that can be very painful. They don't like to not be in a relationship. They can be relationship hoppers. They go from relationship to relationship, not taking the appropriate time to grieve someone before hopping into another relationship. Inside of relationships, they generally are their superpower is they can be very warm, very kind individuals. I've never met an AP that you just didn't feel so good to be around because they're so warm and inviting and kind. But where they trip up a little bit in relationships is they tend to drop their boundaries. They tend to abandon themselves in favor of their partner's needs. And then usually they have the same pattern in relationships where they just go from one relationship to another, not grieving the relationship appropriately, and then next partner becomes an emotional band-aid to band-aid the pain of the past partner that was gone. So they really don't like to take that time to stop and to truly process the pain of a lost relationship. And then inside of relationships, they hate conflict. They're just like the dismissive avoidant in that fact. APs and DAs both hate conflict. Conflict for the AP means possibility of abandonment. So they don't like it. So oftentimes they hold their needs back or they will fawn in conflict. So fawn is really what we call a functional freeze response. And in my group, I go way into detail about the nervous system and how the nervous system can function in different states around intimacy and the different attachments and how their nervous system functions. But the primary conflict response of an anxious preoccupied is to fawn, which is to apologize, just to fall on the sword and say, okay, you're right, I'm sorry. Just like, forgive me. I shouldn't have brought that up. You're right, I'm wrong. Let's just forget this ever happened. Because they would rather have the connection and their needs be abandoned than the connection to be abandoned. That's their biggest fear, that their partner's gonna leave them. So they might approach conflict and come to the table and say, hey, this is what I need. But if their partner gets defensive or starts to get reactive or starts to pull away, they'll freak out and they'll be like, okay, never mind. Now that I think about it, that I shouldn't have brought that up. You're right, I'm wrong. Because they're trying to save the connection. And unfortunately, this means that they're pretty boundaryless. And they can build up resentment inside of relationships. And they can be very unhappy, but also very difficult for them to leave relationships as well. Because remember, for them to be single means that they're abandoned and they're not worth anything. And so in the relationship, they are highly focused, like I said, on what does my partner need from me? And they are rarely assessing appropriately, are my needs being met from my partner? Is my partner good enough for me by meeting my needs and giving me what I want in a relationship? They're way more focused on, am I giving my partner what they want so that they don't abandon me? Okay, so they only stay on that anxious side of the spectrum. They don't hop over. An anxious preoccupied person might go into a flight response where they get a little quiet, but that is not them being avoidant. That is them rapidly trying to figure out, what is my next strategy to activate? And activate meaning to seek connection. So if they get a little quiet, that's not them going avoidant. Very, very different. And it's very minimal because they're already choosing their next strategy to try to get connection. So anxious preoccupied folks tend to love the dismissive avoidant. So we're gonna hop over to the dismissive avoidant side. I'm gonna deep dive into that. So biggest need for the AP, reassurance of love and stability in the relationship. Biggest wounds, I'm not good enough, which means I could be good enough, so I'll try harder. And then I'm gonna be abandoned. So that fear of abandonment really, really means that they will drop their boundaries. Okay, let's hop over to the dismissive avoidant side. So we're gonna jump over here, all the way to over here. So secure is right here. We have this space on the avoidant end of the spectrum. This is the complete opposite of the anxious preoccupied in so many ways. Dismissive avoidant individuals, one thing they do share with anxious preoccupieds, besides the hate of conflict, is that they almost always report, I would say 85% of the DAs in my practice report, I had a good childhood. My parents were around, my parents stayed married, I knew I was loved. But when I dig deeper with them, I usually ask them, hey, could you go to your parents for emotional support when you were a kid? And I have to kind of define emotional support. Emotional support isn't, hey, I have this problem, what should I do? That's instrumental problem solving. That's not emotional support. Emotional support would be going to your parent and saying, hey, this thing happened to me and I feel sad or scared or disappointed or confused or rejected or alone or whatever. It's communicating emotion and asking for their parent to step in and help soothe them. through that negative emotion. And this is where the dismissive avoidants usually look at me like, with like these wide eyes, and they're like, no. And when I ask why wouldn't you go to your parents for emotional support? The most common answer I get is, I don't know, I just wouldn't have done that. It just wasn't what we did in my family. We just really didn't talk about emotions very much. I would just always handle things on my own. And really, what happened to them in childhood is that when they were young children, key attachment years are really 0 to 5 years old. It doesn't mean your attachment isn't influenced after those years. It's just kind of like, think of it as building the foundation of a house from 0 to 5 years old. Their parents often dismissed, ignored, or punished their emotions. And this could look very benevolent or very benign. It's not easy to spot to an untrained eye. And a lot of parents were very well-meaning with their kids when they dismissed their children. So let me give you an example of what this would look like. Let's say we have 3-year-old little Sally, little girl, on the playground, and she falls and she skins her knee and she's bleeding and she's crying and she's in pain and she's never seen blood, so she doesn't know what's going on. She cries for her mom. Mom comes over there. A very dismissive, avoidant mother would say, oh, you're fine. That's just a little scrape. Dust you off. Go over there and play with Jennifer. That's why you're here, right? That's why you're here. Go on. Stop crying. You're fine. You're fine. That's okay. It's just a little scrape. So that mother did not recognize her child's emotions, talk to the child about what happened, soothe the child's nervous system. Immediately, it was stop crying. You're okay. And an emotionally attuned mother would do something very different. She would have gotten down on Sally's level, probably picked her up, had physical contact, which is intimacy, and would have said, oh no, Sally, you fell down. That hurt, didn't it? Oh, you see blood. I know that looks scary, doesn't it? But I'm going to get you cleaned up and you're safe. You're okay. So I know it hurts. And I know you were scared. I know it hurts. I know you were scared. You fell down. I acknowledge the experience and I acknowledge the emotions that you might be feeling. And then what happens is little Sally with attuned mom is going to borrow her mom's nervous system. So she's going to feel these difficult emotions in her body, but it's also pairing safety with those difficult emotions because mom is there to soothe and mom is regulated. And we have these things called mirror neurons in our brain. When somebody does an action and we're watching it, our mirror neurons will start to fire as if it's happening to us. So when mom is regulated and Sally is dysregulated, Sally gets to borrow mom's nervous system. And when mom helps Sally identify emotions, Sally feels comfortable and safe enough to express them and sit in them. So her brain is essentially processing the emotions somatically through her body. Brain is integrating what has happened, especially when mom gives information about what's happening. That's how Sally is learning about her own emotions. And then when the emotion completes from Sally, then she feels like going up and playing again, but mom will sit with her, right? And be that nervous system that Sally can sort of borrow from. So in dismissive avoidant households, emotions were sort of dismissed in this way that looked like, you're okay, oh, life's tough, you just gotta figure it out, you just gotta push through. It's sort of a pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality because parents are so afraid of their children not learning to be tough. And especially for boys, where there is also this cultural pressure to essentially be stoic, suppress your emotions, whatever. When you're dismissed over and over again as a child, you learn, 1, emotions are not safe. They lead to rejection. Number 2, emotions make you weak and make you bad, okay? And your job is to get rid of them. And don't you dare put them on anybody else. So a little child has no alternative coping strategy when there is no attunement, when they get dismissed, other than to suppress. And a little child will use distraction to suppress. They'll go color. They'll go play outside. They'll go play a video game. Nowadays, it will get on kids' YouTube or whatever and doom scroll. Essentially, they never learn how to sit with their difficult emotions inside of their body. They suppress, and the brain and body are pulled apart when we're suppressing and dissociating. Brain is somewhere else while body is experiencing the emotion, but if brain is someone else, the emotion doesn't get processed and integrated into the psyche. Emotions are energy in motion and they get stuck. Just like emotions don't complete when we band-aid them either, like the anxious preoccupied does. So inside of relationships, dismissive avoidants are just too distant and they don't realize it. They do not see how distant they are. Just like the AP doesn't see how clingy they are, the DA does not see how distant they are. So they can be really good in the beginning because they're not triggered very much in the beginning of relationships. In the beginning of relationships, they very much can be, I would say, more transparent, not necessarily vulnerable, but they can give a lot of effort. And then it tends to be around 4 to 6 months, sometimes 8 months, sometimes even a year, then they start to distance because they're triggered by normal relationship things like increasing commitment, expectation being placed upon them to meet someone else's needs, losing some of their independence and autonomy and having to give it to the other person. Vulnerability, super triggering, and then conflict is super triggering. Because when they were dismissed as a child, they looked around and they were like, well, I have all of these things called feelings, but essentially no one else around me does. So I guess something is wrong with me. I must be defective. And no, they don't have that word to use, but the subconscious doesn't have language. The subconscious speaks in feeling in the body. So they felt in their body that they were defective. And so that subconscious blueprint of defectiveness, that wound, gets imprinted. And that is why they are insanely sensitive to criticism. Because defectiveness has so much internalized shame associated with it. Because think about it this way. The AP, I am not good enough, like I said, it suggests you could be better. You could work harder. But defectiveness says there's no point in trying. You're broken and bad, and it can't be changed. That is insanely painful. And that massive amount of shame and pain to someone who emotionally suppresses is only going to get suppressed. It's going to start to bubble up, and the brain is going to go, oh my gosh, we can't face that. So this is where we see the conflict strategy. Dismissive avoidants tend to have one of two primary conflict strategies: fight to freeze or fawn to freeze. So more female dismissive avoidants will fawn. They'll say, okay, you're right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you, let's just forget it. But they're not even processing what's happening. Fawn is a functional freeze response. So their brain is just like, it's not safe to run, it's not safe to fight, just apologize. And this will be over. And a lot of times their brain just kind of interprets that the apology is enough, even though they don't even really know what they're sorry for in the moment because they're very, very slow emotional processors. It tends to be more men who will go from fight to freeze, because when we have massive internalized shame starting to come up, the brain is very, strategic. It says, well, let's try fighting the shame. Let me turn around and make it my partner's problem. Let me tell my partner they're too sensitive, that they misunderstood me, that they're making a big deal out of nothing, all of that stuff. They can put it on partner. If I can throw it back on you, then I get out of my shame. I don't have to feel it. And that's not conscious. That's subconscious. They don't know they're doing that. They think they're just trying to explain because they feel attacked. But subconscious is going, no, we're so shameful, and we can't bear that. So this, we got to make sure that this isn't true. This can't be our fault, right? They're in this state of really desperation to try to get rid of the internalized shame. And if they can't fight it off, and a lot of times it works with an AP. The AP will back down. The fearful avoidant, which we're going to talk about next, does not back down. They have too much of a need to be understood. So if they're with a fearful avoidant who keeps going, nope, you hurt me. Here's how you hurt me. I'm not backing down from this. Then they'll use their second line strategy, which is shut down. Because if fighting it doesn't work, hiding from it has to. So they will shut down into their turtle shell, and they will attempt to do what they think is regulating, but it's really suppressing, dissociating, or even intellectualizing, which is just trying to think and problem solve instead of actually feeling the pain that they've experienced due to this relationship disruption. And then their nervous system, essentially in that freeze response, says, nope, you can't go back and repair. One time I had a DA tell me that trying to go back and repair something with their partner was the equivalent to them of moving towards a chainsaw that somebody was holding that was turned on, like walking towards a moving chainsaw. That is how they felt about returning to conflict. Their nervous system is so frozen and so scared of doing that. And they don't even know they're that scared. You have to realize this is all subconscious. The nervous system is directing our behavior always when we're insecurely attached and we're in the trigger cycle. So their nervous system is saying, no way, we can't reapproach. We can't bring this back up. That's way too unsafe, because it knows that massive amount of shame from feeling defective that they can't handle. So it's best to just try to act like it didn't happen. So inside relationships, again, they're not very vulnerable. After a certain period of time, they tend to withdraw their attention and affection. They tend to have blinders on. Because when you are dismissed and emotionally neglected in childhood, your nervous system adapts to that by giving you a self-directed attention system. If you don't have a competent adult sort of holding your hand through the problems in life, and you are pushed into hyper-independence, and you're told to focus on responsibility and achievement, which is really mostly what they do, focus on responsibility and achievement, your attention system is going to wire towards self. So they're walking around in their relationship with these blinders on, like, what do I need? What's good for me? What's on my plate for today? How am I doing? Am I okay? And then they miss what their partner needs. And they don't mean to be so selfish. I don't even like to use the word selfish. I like to use the word self-directed, because there is no malice in their behavior. They don't see it. They don't. And so then it ends up creating problems. Their partner thinks you're too distant. You don't give me enough attention. You don't give me enough affection. You don't want to come and repair things when there's a disruption. You must not love me, which that's their own painful story. Okay, we can tell ourselves that we're not good enough, or that we're betrayed or rejected, but really people are just acting based on their own trauma responses that really probably have not much to do with you. So the dismissive avoidant can very much struggle in relationships. A lot of times they do a slow fade away where they just make it so miserable that you end up leaving them. Or a lot of times they will end things abruptly if there's been a conflict that they feel like has, just solidified. And when they're deactivating, which is their shutdown into their freeze, they start getting the ick. They start feeling like, ugh. Their thoughts are so predictable. Their thoughts are like, oh my gosh, here we go again, another fight. I just don't have the energy for this. Maybe I just can't give you what you need. Maybe you just need somebody that's more emotional than me. They're like, oh my gosh, you're so dramatic. You're always picking on me, always causing a problem. So they sort of convince themselves that y'all just aren't compatible, and that you need somebody different, and that they would be doing you a favor if they just got out of your life. Because inherently, subconsciously, they're like, yeah, I'm not capable of this. Even though that doesn't translate consciously, they're going to blame it on lack of compatibility or, whatever. At their inner core, they're feeling defective and feeling like a failure. And they suppress that. And they walk around pretty numb from being suppressed and dissociated, because when we suppress, we don't get to choose what we suppress. Everything goes into the bucket. So if pain over the relationship is in the lockbox bucket, whatever you want to call it, so are the feelings for their partner. So if you wonder why it seems like they don't care about you, they do, but they wall themselves off from their own feelings. They suppress it, and you don't get to choose what you suppress. So it's not that they don't care, they just can't access the feelings. And oftentimes true loss and boundaries are the only thing that help them access their feelings. And that's for a whole nother conversation. But let's talk about the fearful avoidant. They're the most dynamic, meaning they have the most trait variability. One fearful avoidant is not going to necessarily look exactly like the next fearful avoidant. That's not true for the AP and DA. AP and DA, they mostly look alike. And I will say, I have about 10 to 15% of DAs that had early severe childhood trauma plus severe emotional neglect. So that can be a combination that does it too. But most of the time, when we have big T trauma in childhood or consistent little t traumas, the child ends up becoming a fearful avoidant. And when I talk trauma, I'm talking about, it could be parents that fight a lot or fight all the time. That can be a little or T trauma. If the fighting was bad, like we're talking domestic violence, big T trauma. So it could be witnessing abuse, being a victim of abuse, the death of a parent, the abandonment of a parent, a nasty divorce where the child was kind of put in the middle. It could be a parent with a substance abuse issue that was dysfunctional, or a parent with a mental health issue that was dysfunctional. they would lose trust in that parent, or even with both parents. When they were a child, the parent was dysfunctional enough that the child sort of looked at them and was like, you're not going to be able to love me in a way that feels good. My source of love is also a source of pain in my life. So what gets imprinted when that happens? Love is not safe. Love is dangerous. Love comes with pain, and I will be betrayed. Everybody will eventually hurt me, let me down, etc. And then they develop both an anxious side to their attachment and an avoidant side. So they can hop. They can be anxious and activate and really want connection, but they're always sort of competing with this idea that they could be betrayed. So they'll really want connection, and then the moment that they feel a little bit of betrayal, and we'll talk about what that is for the fearful avoidant, they can push back and they can go colder. We can lean more anxious, we can lean more avoidant. Most of the time they'll go opposite of partner. So if the fearful is with an AP, they will be way more avoidant. If the fearful is with a DA, they will be way more anxious. Fearful avoidants have a few common traits that unite them, but they're few. One, they have both attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance. Number two, they are hypervigilant. So they can read a facial expression, a tone, a vibe, a room in 0.5 seconds. The more anxious fearfuls are like emotional supercomputers, where the DA, like they have a high level understanding of their emotions, like I'm happy, sad, I'm angry, that's their spectrum. A fearful avoidant, especially if they're more anxious, will be like, no, I feel rejected, I feel confused, I'm disappointed, I feel worthless, I feel attacked, I feel judged. They can go very granular with their emotions. They can process them in 2.5 seconds, and they can verbalize them very well. Doesn't mean they always will. They might be too afraid or feel like it's not worth it, but they know how they feel most of the time. The more avoidant ones, again, if they're freezing a lot and going up into that shutdown mode, they might not be able to access their emotions. They're going to be slower processors, but usually eventually they can get there, where the DA can stay stuck not getting there for a very long time. Fearful avoidance, their conflict strategies are all over the place. You don't know what you're going to get from an FA. I like to describe two primary patterns that I see, but honestly, it can kind of be all over the place. I always call them the deflated balloon, which is the more anxious fearful. They will come out of the gate fighting. They tend to be the most reactive of all the insecure styles. Here's how you need to understand me. Here's what I need. Here's what you're doing that hurts me. They have the deepest need to be understood. By far, that is their deepest need, to the point where they want people to predict their needs. They want mind reading. Most of them do. And they don't realize that they expect mind reading, but they absolutely do. They're like, you should be able to study me, see my needs, and meet them without me having to ask. If I have to ask, then it doesn't count. An anxious fearful will fight and fight and fight and fight to be understood, and then they will run out of gas. Or air, I should say, in the example. And when they run out of air, then they deflate and they shut down into their avoidance. They give up hope. Usually it's the point of hopelessness, like I'm not going to be heard here. I'm not going to be understood. No point in continuing. Then we have the pressure cooker. This is the long fuse FA. So they will hold it in a flight response, hold it in, keep building up resentment. And then there will be a straw that breaks the camel's back moment for them. And then they will just kind of explode, and a laundry list of grievances will come out. So you can be either one, and they can flip-flop. Sometimes they might be the deflated balloon. Sometimes they might be the pressure cooker. Sometimes they will go all the way up into that freeze, which is level 2 trauma, dorsal vagal shutdown, frozen nervous system. But usually they don't stay frozen as long as the dismissive avoidant can. A lot of fearful avoidants will just toggle between fight and flight, fight and flight. And a lot of fearful avoidants, especially individuals who have had deep trauma stemming from childhood, they will never get down to a safe space in their nervous system. It's very rare for them to feel a state of safety in their nervous system. So they are kind of walking on edge, if you will. They can do things like test trust in the relationship, protest using the silent treatment because they want you to dig at them, probe at them. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? No, tell me. No, tell me. To them, that's like, oh, you want to understand me. And I like that. I like you digging to try to figure me out. So I'm going to give you the silent treatment because I don't have to be vulnerable. I can just tell you with my behavior and being quiet that something is wrong, and then I'm going to get my need to be understood met because you're going to probe and you're going to dig. They can move the goalpost in relationships, and not every FA does these things. Again, FAs are widely variable. So they can move the goalpost, which is like, today I'm mad at you over this thing. And then tomorrow I'm mad at you over this other new thing. And then the next day I'm mad at you because of this new thing. So they're kind of always finding a problem. And that's because their biggest wound is betrayal. They expect people to let them down. And so they are hyper vigilant and hyper attuned to all the ways their partner is letting them down. And a betrayal for the fearful avoidant isn't just like what we would think betrayal is, like being cheated on. Mm-mm-mm. A betrayal is anytime I have a need and you don't meet it and you don't guess it. Or if I tell you that I have a need and then you don't do it, then it's a real big betrayal. And they're very sensitive to words not matching actions and people not following through on what they say. So one of the worst things you can do for an FA is hurt them, apologize, say you're gonna change, and then do it again. That makes them feel incredibly betrayed because you getting to know them and you being consistent and you following through for them means that they can trust you. They equate being known with being able to trust you. And so I'd say the most popular dynamic that I see in my practice is the fearful avoidant with the dismissive avoidant. Sometimes I see an AP with a DA or an AP with an FA, but the most popular dynamic I see, it's because it's the most painful besides being with a narcissist, is this FA-DA combination. So the fearful avoidant is with the dismissive avoidant. They want to be deeply seen, heard, understood, big betrayal wound. They're with the DA who fades away over time, who's not affectionate enough, doesn't give them enough attention, doesn't meet their needs. And then essentially, the FA will come to the DA and say, hey, you're not meeting my needs. That immediately triggers the defectiveness wound of the dismissive avoidant, and they will get defensive, trying to fight the shame, and then they will withdraw, hide from the shame if that doesn't work, because the FA is going to double down and be like, no, you have to understand me. Then the FA feels incredibly betrayed because the DA will not resolve the conflict. They feel like, hey, I was vulnerable with you, which can be hard for an FA, and you took it and did nothing with it other than tell me how I was wrong and then shut down. So then what does the FA do? They try to come back and force the DA to understand them. The DA fights it off and then shuts down. And then we have this going on endlessly until the fearful avoidant loses hope. And remember what I said when they lose hope, they shut down into their avoidant side. And then we have two people that are very disconnected. And this person has the wall of pain up, and this person feels incredibly attacked, underappreciated, judged, and feeling like they just can't give their partner what they need. And it will go on endlessly until they get the tools to correct it. And so those are the three insecure styles. Let me talk about security and what it looks like, and then I'm going to talk about why awareness is a great first step, but we need to get the right tools to be able to fix this. So let's go in that direction. Securely attached individuals had parents where both mom and dad were attuned. And a mother-father dynamic in a relationship is so important. And unfortunately, that is not going to be all families. A mother's job, and this is in their nature, is to be more emotionally vulnerable, is to be more nurturing, is to be more of the listener. And the father's job is to be empathetic, yes, but really allow the child to sit in a little bit more discomfort, teach a little bit more grit, teach a little bit more about personal responsibilities and all of that good stuff. And you have to think about it as like a string that is getting pulled in both directions to stay taut in the middle. That is the function of both parents. And so it's really important to understand that even if you're not in a nuclear family, you can still raise a securely attached child. But you are going to have to work overtime to do both things for the child. You're going to have to be nurturing and also teach them grit and teach them to be able to sit through difficulty sometimes, because that's life. So secure individuals had both parents that had empathy and attunement. Dad did a good job of teaching some grit along the way. Mom did a good job of teaching them that being vulnerable is safe and okay. Generally, the parents had a good, secure relationship that they modeled to their children. So parents were able to communicate openly, respectfully. They resolved conflict in front of their kids because they didn't really fight. They just disagreed and talked it out. So the child learned conflict's not abnormal. Conflict happens, but when it happens, we just work it out. We just talk about it. Again, they had attunement. So they learned to stay regulated in their nervous system during vulnerability, and they learned to stay regulated in their nervous system with conflict. because their parents demonstrated that both within their marriage or relationship and in their individual relationship with the child. So attachment is very experiential. We have to feel it. And those feelings in our body are what imprints our nervous system. So at the heart of secure attachment is having a safe nervous system with all different parts of intimate relationships. Insecure attachment is based around the fact that your nervous system was wired to be dysregulated when certain difficulties with intimacy will pop up. And inherently, this is why most insecurely attached people either can't stay in a stable relationship or end up very unhappy in a relationship, even if they stay. Because their nervous systems weren't wired for healthy intimacy. Securely attached folks were. Their parents held good boundaries with them. Their parents communicated well with them. And boundaries help you learn to trust when you're a kid. So when you hold boundaries with your kids, even though they might not love them at first, it really shows them where their parameters are. So it shows them that they can trust you. If they move too far, they're going to butt up against you, the parent. They're not going to butt up against the dangerous world out there. So securely attached parents raised kids that have good boundaries, that don't tolerate mistreatment, that can communicate their needs openly and not expect mind reading, that aren't extremely dysregulated when conflict happens. They communicate and they can be vulnerable and intimate, and they're very good at meeting other people's needs while also balancing their own independence. We call that interdependence. The anxious preoccupied is codependent, the DA is hyper independent, the FA can go either way, but secure people are interdependent, meaning they are able to balance being with their partner, meeting their needs, having that intimacy, and their own life to some degree. And they're able to make relationships work because of those attributes. So why is awareness not enough? Okay, why is awareness not enough? Because awareness is never going to shape how your nervous system functions when these triggers occur. It's not enough to just know that you do these things and get something to execute. And that's what a therapist and a lot of coaches are doing. People find me when they've tanked in therapy. It's like therapy helped me know a lot of stuff, but I've never gotten any better. And that was my journey. I studied this. I was like the cardiologist with high blood pressure. I was an attachment expert, but couldn't fix my own attachment. It's because I was never given the tools. And the tools that I did learn about in my training, I used, and they didn't really help me very much. And so for a long time, I thought maybe I'm just that broken, that the average stuff doesn't help. But then when I really had my attachment breakdown, and for those of you that listen to the podcast, you know my personal journey. Ex-husband passed away, father of my kids, mom had cancer, dog died, DA boyfriend left me, all in a period of like 6 weeks. So I had an attachment crisis. And all of my attachments were pulled at once. And I got to a really low place. And I was determined to heal, and I went to the science. First I went to God, and then God gave me the hope. And I went into the science and I said, I have got to fix this. And that is when I really started looking at the research of people that I admired, people that I had honestly studied under, and really started picking their brains. And they pointed me to other researchers that were really diving into how do we permanently fix attachment? Because it is not enough to just say, yes, I have these patterns and I know I need to do something different than I'm doing. Because when you're triggered, you're going to get flooded into dysregulation, and your trauma responses are going to override your good intentions every single time. So when you are in a state of safety, when you learn those tools to be able to garner safety in your nervous system around intimacy, vulnerability, conflict, boundaries, communication, no matter what's coming up, you are then switching from your emotional midbrain, which is where you all operate from when you're triggered, to your prefrontal cortex, which is your rational brain, and it's where your empathy lives. It's where self-control lives, and it's where mindfulness lives. Mindful of your tone, your words, your behavior, etc. And when you learn that, then you can show up with discernment. You have clarity, you can stay calm, you desire to be engaged. Actually, safety in our nervous system is called ventral vagal state of operating, and it's nicknamed the state of social engagement because it is where we desire connection. And so awareness is not enough, and things to execute are not enough. So I can tell you all day long, say this and not that. But when you're triggered by your partner, you're not going to remember to say this or not that. You are going to go right into the same old trauma responses you've always gone into. You might be able to white knuckle it, really push hard to try to do something different, but that's going to tank your nervous system because the nervous system operates like a gas tank. And so you're going to run out of gas, and then you're going to default back to these old patterns. So those are the 4 attachment styles for sure. And we don't, like I said, we don't have 3, we have 4, and that is very common. So unfortunately, I'm not adept enough at YouTube Live to see a lot of the comments, and I really can't answer a lot of questions, but you can send me a PM on IG, on Facebook, and I have a free community, Love Docs Clients and Community on Facebook. You can join that. I moderate it. I answer posts as much as I can, answer questions as much as I can. But if you're really serious about this, if you're like, okay, I know that I need to...
You can text me and I'll answer.
Yes, so we have Raina, who is the VP of the Love Doc Relationship Coaching Services.
Hey,
she is here with me tonight, and I am actually going to give you her phone number, okay? You are going to get her phone number, so get a pen, get something to write it down. I'm gonna give you her phone number, and you can send her a text message, and she is really my strategic coordinator of matching people to my best services. So all of the tools that you need to become securely attached, I teach in my hybrid program, which is a much more cost-effective option if you want to work with me than one-on-one coaching. But Raina is the one that is going to help you decide what is best for you. Is it one-on-one coaching? Is it the hybrid group? Is it my self-paced program? So I'm going to give you her phone number, and you can send her a text message, and she will... she's the co-host of the Love Doc podcast, guys, right here in person. We're a great team. And she's going to be moderating those texts tonight. So she's going to be doing nothing. She's got to drive to Gatlinburg tonight, guys. All night long. Right here. So she's going to be
I won't be driving. My husband.
No, her husband's going to be driving, and she's going to be answering text messages. So I'm going to announce the number. You ready?
Write it down. We don't have a chat feature, so we'll say it a couple of times.
Okay. 225-350-3853. I'll say it several times. 225-350-3853. For a third time. 225-350-3853. And if you want more information on my services, on how to work with me or my associate coaches, and you're wondering what service might be best for you because you really want to do the deep work, this is not for anybody that just wants quick hacks. Earning your attachment security is deep work, but it's powerful and it pays off and it will dramatically transform you and your relationship. So if you are interested in that, please text Raina at that number. And you know what? Let's give them a discount if they book something tonight.
Okay.
Can we do that? Can we create a discount code?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's make it first 10. For the first 10 people.
10 people who purchase.
We'll give you 10% off.
Anything. You can purchase anything.
Anything. One-on-ones, group, self-paced program. That she will remind you of the discount code. Make it first 10.
Okay.
10, number 10.
Okay.
And then what I'll do too, just as a bonus, I've never done this, but I'm going to do it because I love my community and God just put it on my heart to give as much free things as possible, which is why I will always be making free content. I'll be going live more. But again, I can't necessarily teach you the deep work right here, right? I need to do that in an intimate setting because I need to get to know your nervous system in order to do that. I will give you an extra bonus call. If you book any service tonight, you will get an extra Q&A with me in a small group setting, and you will get to pick my brain. Okay, so if you book any service, like my hybrid group comes with 4 calls, and you can be anonymous in the group too, by the way. Anonymous participation is absolutely fine with us if that's what you want, so don't be scared of the word group. But I'll throw in a bonus call too with you guys. So first 10 people will get a discount. It'll end at midnight. And then anybody who books tonight will give you the bonus call with me where you can pick my brain.
So generous. You guys are already texting me.
Oh, yay! I'll repeat it one more time. 225-350-3853. That is the number. and she's gonna be
Be
on it.
patient with me. That's all I'm
Yeah,
gonna
we
ask.
just got one person, okay?
Be patient.
But we don't expect all 300 people on here to be, searching for services. So between now and midnight, Raina will be texting you back and trying to work with you to figure out what service is best for you. You can talk to her about your relationship and what's going on, and she will suggest what she thinks is best. She's my right-hand lady.
Please text only, guys. I'm
Text.
not going to be able to
She's not going to be able to answer calls because that's
Yeah.
all she would be doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's text only.
Yes.
If you call, she's going to hit the red button because
Yeah.
she's going to be answering text messages.
Yeah, because otherwise I would stay on a call with one person. I get it. It's easy to get on there and just kind of want to talk about your situation, but this is for specific, just around services. I'm not a coach, right? So I can't give you specifics on your actual relationship, but I can point you in the right direction in terms of what service is best for you.
Yes, because I have I give all of my team, like, here's how I would, choose a service for someone. They are very well trained on that based on what you've got going on. They know what service is best for you. So we will absolutely.
I'll give you my number one more time: 325-350-3853.
Yes, that's a mouthful. 3853.
Lots of threes.
Guys, thank you so much for joining me on my very first webinar. I did one, and I would just love to have the opportunity to work with you, whether that's in my self-paced program where you don't get live contact with me, but you get basically my program to do on your own, or you can get my self-paced program with the hybrid group where you do get to pick my brain, or you can work with me or one of my associate coaches one-on-one. So it's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for your attention tonight, and I will see you later. Bye, everybody. Thank you for being here.